The second day brought worse weather as the storms that always circled the planet grew stronger. The wind howled across the ice fields carrying snow and ice crystals that could cut through unprotected skin in seconds. The alien soldiers struggled to move in their heavy suits while their equipment continued to fail, and the brutal cold Commander Velther stood in his command center aboard the flagship, watching his forces through satellite feeds. The mining operation was supposed to be in full swing by now, but his soldiers could barely maintain their positions on the surface. He had never encountered a world that fought back so hard against his presence. The first alien patrol ventured deeper into what they thought was empty wilderness. They carried heavy scanners and drilling equipment to test for mineral deposits. Their leader, Sergeant Krexen, moved slowly through the snow drifts, his suit making loud mechanical noises as the heating system worked overtime to keep him alive. What Krexen did not know was that he was walking directly into a carefully planned trap. The humans had been watching every move through hidden cameras, and they knew exactly where the patrol was going. Choi Sujin and her team waited in the ice tunnels below, ready to spring their surprise. Sujin had spent 3 years training for this moment. She was 25 years old and had been born in the colony. She knew every tunnel and every hiding place in this section of the ice fields. Her team of 6 fighters moved through the underground passages like ghosts, completely silent and invisible to the aliens above. The human fighters emerged from concealed hatches in the ice directly behind the alien patrol. The aliens never saw them coming. The first they knew of the humans' presence was when their rear guard simply vanished. His emergency beacon went silent and his suit stopped transmitting data. Krexen spun around when he heard the alarm from his soldiers' communications system. Where his rear guard had been standing there was only empty snow. The wind had already covered any tracks, and there was no sign of what had happened to the missing soldier. Sujin and her team had pulled the alien soldier down through a hidden trapdoor in the ice. The soldier was now unconscious and secured in one of their underground holding cells. His suit and weapons would be studied by the colony's engineers to learn more about alien technology. The patrol leader tried to radio his command, but the extreme weather was interfering with communications. The cold was also affecting his equipment, and half his scanners had already stopped working. He made the decision to return to base immediately before they lost more soldiers. But the humans were not finished with them. Jungmann Seo activated a series of holographic projectors hidden in the ice formations around the patrol. The aliens suddenly found themselves surrounded by false walls and passages that appeared completely real on their sensors. The patrol wandered in circles for 2 hours, following what they thought were clear paths, only to find themselves back where they started. Their suits were running low on power, and the heating systems were failing. The soldiers began to panic as they realized they were completely lost. Back at the alien base camp, Commander Velther received the confused reports from the patrol. He could not understand how experienced soldiers could get lost in such a small area. The satellite images showed clear terrain with no obstacles, but his soldiers reported walls and barriers everywhere. What Velther could not see was the network of human tunnels and chambers that existed beneath the ice. The colony had been built like an iceberg, with most of its structure hidden below the surface. The aliens were looking at a world that was completely different from what actually existed. Han Ji-woo monitored the alien communications from his hidden listening post built into what appeared to be a natural rock formation. He could hear the growing fear and confusion in the alien voices as their equipment continued to fail and their soldiers went missing. The colony had prepared for this day for many years. They had studied the weaknesses of technology that was not designed for extreme cold. They knew that most alien species came from warmer worlds and would struggle with the brutal conditions on Arcturus. 70R Shin Aaron examined the captured alien equipment in her underground laboratory. The weapons were impressive, but they had serious flaws in extreme cold. The power cells drained quickly and the targeting systems froze up. The aliens had never fought in conditions like these. The first direct confrontation happened when young alien soldier Drexler stumbled into a human observation post while trying to find his way back to base. He came face to face with Kim Haejin, who was monitoring alien movements through electronic sensors. Both of them froze in shock for a long moment. The alien had never seen a human before and could not believe that anyone could survive in such conditions without a heavy environmental suit. Hejin was dressed in light thermal clothing and seemed completely comfortable in the killing. Cold Hyjin triggered her emergency beacon and vanished into the ice maze through a hidden door that closed behind her, leaving no trace. Drexer was left staring at empty air, wondering if he had imagined the whole encounter. The cold was making him dizzy and confused. The alien tried to report what he had seen, but his commander dismissed it as a hallucination caused by the extreme conditions. Many of the soldiers were experiencing problems with their environmental suits and seeing things that were not there, but more reports began coming in. Soldiers described seeing figures moving in the snow, human-shaped shadows that appeared and disappeared, equipment that mysteriously stopped working, footprints that led nowhere. The aliens began to fear that the planet itself was haunted. Colony leader Yoon Taijin called an emergency meeting in the Great Hall carved deep in the bedrock beneath the ice. The council chamber was warm and comfortable, lit by geothermal energy and decorated with art created by the colonists over the year. Taijin was 70 years old and had helped establish the colony as a young engineer. He had seen the settlement grow from a few emergency shelters to a thriving city of 3,000 people. Now he faced the greatest threat to their survival. Council included representatives from all parts of the colony: engineers, farmers, soldiers, teachers, doctors, and artists. All of them had been born on this world or had chosen to make it their home. They would not give it up without a fight. The decision was unanimous. They would resist the invasion using every advantage their world gave them. The aliens thought they were conquering an empty planet, but they were about to discover that this frozen wasteland had masters who would defend it to the death. As night fell over the ice fields, the temperature dropped even further. The alien soldiers huddled in their heated shelters while their equipment slowly froze and failed. Meanwhile, the humans moved freely through their warm tunnels, planning their next moves in the war for their world. The third day of the invasion brought no relief for the alien forces. More ships arrived carrying reinforcements and heavy equipment. But the brutal conditions continued to take their toll. Commander Velther watched his carefully planned operation falling apart as soldiers and machinery succumbed to the killing cold. The new arrivals brought thermal weapons designed to melt large sections of ice. The aliens planned to use these weapons to clear landing zones and establish permanent bases. But they had no idea that melting the ice would reveal secrets the humans had hidden for years. Deep beneath the surface, the colony revealed its true nature. This was not just a small outpost struggling to survive. It was a technological marvel that had been built over 15 years by some of the most brilliant engineers humanity had ever produced. Quan Haijin stood in the central command center, watching displays that showed the true scope of their civilization. The main city stretched for kilometers through natural caves and artificial tunnels. The geothermal power plants provided endless clean energy. The hydroponic farms could feed 10,000 people. Manufacturing centers produced everything the colony needed, from clothing and tools to advanced electronics and weapons. The humans had not just survived on this frozen world, they had built a complete civilization that was completely invisible from the surface. The colony had been designed from the beginning to be hidden. The founders knew that other species might someday find their world, and they wanted to be prepared. The surface installations were all camouflaged or disguised as natural formation. Shiajin had been the colony's military planner for 8 years. She had studied warfare and strategy, preparing for the day when they might have to defend their home. She had never expected that day to come so soon, but she was ready. The alien thermal weapons began their bombardment at dawn. Massive beams of energy melted through ice formations that had stood for thousands of years. Steam rose in great clouds as frozen water turned to vapor. The aliens cheered as they cleared their first large landing area, but their celebration was short-lived as the ice melted. It revealed something the aliens had not expected. Hidden weapon platforms rose from concealed positions in the newly cleared ground. The humans had built their defenses into the ice itself. Nam Jong-soo led the first counterattack from a command bunker that had been disguised as a natural cave entrance. His team of 20 fighters emerged from tunnels that opened directly beneath the alien positions. The invaders found themselves under attack from enemies who seemed to appear from nowhere. The Human weapons had been specifically designed for Arctic warfare. They worked perfectly in the extreme cold and used the ice and snow as camouflage. The aliens' tropical world technology continued to fail as the temperature dropped even further. Dr. Ru Weijian activated the colony's secret weapon system, a network of industrial heating units hidden throughout the ice fields. Could rapidly change the terrain by melting or freezing selected areas. What appeared to be solid ground could become a deadly trap in minutes. The aliens' first heavy walker, a giant mechanical war machine designed to crush resistance, sank into what had been solid ice moments before. The machine disappeared completely beneath the surface, its crew trapped inside. As the water refroze around them, Beek Soyeon piloted her ice crawler through the chaos, carrying supplies to human fighters at forward positions. Her vehicle was a masterpiece of Arctic engineering designed to traverse any terrain the frozen world could offer. It moved silently and left no tracks the alien forces tried to establish a perimeter around their landing zones, but they found themselves fighting an enemy that could appear anywhere. The humans used the altered landscape to their advantage, moving through tunnels and passages that the aliens could not see. Young pilot Ko Yunseo took off in her Arctic fighter from a runway hidden beneath the ice. Her aircraft was painted white and was nearly invisible against the snow she struck at. Alien air support destroying 3 enemy aircraft before vanishing back into the storm. The aliens began to realize that they were not fighting a primitive outpost. They were facing a sophisticated military force that knew this terrain better than they knew their own homeworld. Every advantage they thought they had was turning against them. Commander Velther received reports that made no sense to him. His forces were being attacked by enemies who seemed to know exactly where they were going. His heavy equipment was being destroyed by weapons that appeared from nowhere. The alien commander called for orbital bombardment, hoping to destroy whatever was hiding beneath the ice, but the humans had prepared for this possibility too hidden. Deep underground were shields and bunkers that could survive anything the aliens could throw at them. As the bombardment began, the colony activated its deepest defenses. Massive blast doors sealed the main tunnels while emergency systems maintained life support. The 3,000 colonists moved to secure areas and waited for the attack to end. The orbital bombardment lasted for 6 hours, turning the surface into a wasteland of melted ice and smoking craters. But when it ended, the human resistance was still there, still fighting, still making the aliens pay for every meter of ground they tried to claim. The colony's hidden nature was finally revealed as emergency exits opened all across the battlefield. Human soldiers emerged from positions the aliens had never suspected, carrying weapons and equipment that worked perfectly in the killing cold. The battle for Arcturus 7 had truly begun, and the aliens were discovering that they had not invaded an empty world. They had attacked the home of 3,000 humans who had spent 15 years turning this frozen hell into their perfect fortress. The massive alien ships came down from space like giant metal birds with dark wings. The ships were bigger than anything humans had ever built, and they moved through the ice storms of planet Arcturus 7 without making any sound at all. Commander Velther stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking down at the frozen world below through the thick glass windows. His yellow eyes with their strange double pupils studied the white surface of the planet. Everything looked dead and empty, just like their spy drones had reported months ago. The world was covered in ice, so thick that nothing could live there, or so the aliens thought. The temperature readings showed -40 degrees and violent storms that never stopped. This would be perfect for their mining operations. Velther touched the communication panel with his long, scaled fingers and spoke to his fleet in their clicking language. Today, we claim this world for the Keltharian Empire. Begin landing procedures and prepare the mining equipment. There are no life forms here to resist us. This will be quick and profitable. Far below on the frozen surface, Kim Woojin lay flat on his belly behind a snowbank that had been shaped by the endless wind. His thermal suit kept him warm even in the killing cold, and his breath came out in small white clouds that disappeared instantly in the bitter air. He held his plasma rifle steady and watched the alien ships through his electronic scope. Woojin had been born on this world 28 years ago, and he knew every ice formation and every hiding place within 100 kilometers. His parents had been part of the first group of humans to land. Here, when he was just a baby, they had come looking for a new home far from the wars and troubles of Earth. The alien ships landed with loud crashes that shook the ground and sent up clouds of ice crystals. The ships were beautiful in a deadly way, with smooth silver hulls and strange markings that seemed to glow with their own light. But Woojin could see that the aliens inside were already having problems. Through his scope he watched as the first group of aliens came out of their ships. They were tall creatures with gray scaled skin and 4 arms each. They had large heads with multiple eyes that moved independently like a lizard's eyes. Their bodies were thin and they moved carefully like they were not used to the cold. The alien commander stepped onto the ice and immediately activated some kind of heating device on his suit. Woojin could see the heat shimmer around the creature and he smiled grimly. These aliens were from a warm world and they had no idea what they were getting into. The cold here was not just uncomfortable, it was deadly deep underground. In the hidden command center, Li Dai sat at her computer station, surrounded by screens showing data from sensors placed all around the colony. The sensors had been watching the alien ships since they first appeared at the edge of the solar system. 3. Daizagagahai had been working on alien language programs for years as part of her job as the colony's communication specialist. She had always wondered if they would ever meet other intelligent life. Now she was frantically trying to decode the alien radio signals, and what she was learning made her hands shake with fear. The aliens were not explorers or traders. They were conquerors who moved from world to world, taking whatever they wanted. They had maps showing the locations of valuable minerals beneath the ice, and they planned to strip mine the entire planet. Their communications talked about moving the ice and setting up permanent bases. She pressed the emergency button that would alert the colony council. This was not a first contact situation, this was an invasion. The aliens thought this world was empty and dead, but they were about to learn how wrong they were. Park Minho emerged from the geothermal caves where most of the colony lived and worked. He was the head engineer, and he had spent 15 years helping to build their hidden city beneath the ice. The caves were warm and comfortable, heated by the planet's own internal heat and connected by kilometers of tunnels. Minho had been expecting this day for years. The colony had always known that other species might find their world. Someday they had prepared for visitors, but they had also prepared for invaders. The aliens would find that this frozen wasteland was not as empty as it appeared. He activated the defense systems that had been built into the ice itself. Weapon platforms that looked like natural ice formations came online. Sensor arrays disguised as rocks began tracking the alien movements. Camouflage doors sealed shut, hiding the entrances to the underground city. The colony had learned to live with the ice and cold, not fight against it. They had turned the harsh environment into their greatest protection. The 3,000 humans who lived here were not just survivors, they were masters of this frozen world above ground. The first alien patrol began moving away from their landing site. They carried strange, glowing weapons and wore thick environmental suits that made them look clumsy and slow. Their equipment kept making beeping sounds as it struggled to work in the extreme cold. The patrol leader, whose name was Crexon, looked at his scanner and frowned. The device was supposed to detect any signs of life or technology, but it kept giving false readings. The extreme cold was making all their equipment work poorly. What Crexon could not see was that he was walking directly over one of the colony's main tunnels. 50 meters beneath his feet, warm air flowed through passages carved from solid rock. Humans walked along well-lit corridors, going about their daily work completely invisible to the aliens above. The aliens set up their first observation post on a hill that gave them a good view of the surrounding area. They did not know that the hill itself was artificial, built by the colony's engineers years ago. Hidden inside the hill were cameras and listening devices that were now watching and recording everything the aliens did. Choi Sujin crouched in a hidden observation bunker built into the side of what looked like a natural ice cliff. She had been watching the aliens for 2 hours now, and she could see that they were already in trouble. Their heating units were working too hard and using up power quickly. Sujin had grown up in these caves and tunnels. She knew how to move silently through the ice passages and how to survive in the open when the storms came. The aliens were loud and clumsy, and they left tracks everywhere. When she spoke quietly into her radio headset, reporting what she saw. To the command center, the aliens have 12 soldiers in this patrol group. Their suits are making noise and they are moving slowly. The cold is already affecting their equipment. Commander Velther grew more frustrated as the day went on. His soldiers were reporting equipment failures and several had to return to the ships because their heating units broke down. The mining surveys were supposed to begin immediately, but his forces could barely establish a secure perimeter. He had conquered 17 worlds for the Caltheran Empire, and none had been this difficult. The cold was like a living enemy that attacked everything they brought to the surface. Even their weapons were working poorly in the extreme temperature. What Velther did not understand was that the humans had spent years learning to work with the cold. Instead of fighting it, they used the ice and snow as building materials. They channeled the wind to generate power. They turned the planet's deadly environment into their allies. The first day ended. The aliens huddled in their heated shelters, while the humans moved freely through their tunnels and caves. The invasion had begun, but the aliens had no idea. They were fighting an enemy that had made this frozen hell into their perfect home. The battle for Arcturus 7 was about to begin, and the aliens were about to learn why humans were the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Not because they were the strongest or had the best weapons, but because they could survive and thrive anywhere they chose to make their stand. The fourth day brought desperate measures as Commander Velther realized his forces were facing a defeat he had never imagined possible. His superiors were demanding results and threatening to send him to the slave pits if he failed to secure the planet. The alien commander authorized the use of weapons that had been banned on civilized worlds: thermal bombs that could melt ice for kilometers, chemical weapons that could poison the air, biological agents that killed all life. The gloves were coming off, but the humans had prepared for this escalation too. The colony had been built to survive anything, including attacks with weapons of mass destruction. The deep tunnels were sealed against chemical attack, and the air purification systems could handle any poison. Kim Sung-ho led the evacuation teams through secondary tunnels as the colony activated its emergency protocols. Civilians moved to the deepest levels while fighters prepared for the final battle. The children and elderly would be safe no matter what happened above. The thermal bombing began at midday. Massive explosions melted entire sections of the ice shelf, creating lakes of steaming water where solid ground had been moments before. The aliens thought they were destroying the human base, but they were only revealing more of it. As the ice melted, it uncovered the outer ring of the colony's defenses. Weapon platforms that had been hidden for over a decade came online, their crews emerging from stasis pods where they had waited for this moment. The real war was about to begin. Minwoo commanded the outer defense ring from a bunker carved into the bedrock itself. His forces had trained for years for this battle, learning to fight in the altered landscape that thermal weapons would create. They were ready. The human counterattack began with precision strikes on alien supply lines. Teams of fighters emerged from the newly created steam clouds. Using the chaotic conditions as perfect cover, the aliens found their ammunition dumps and fuel supplies under constant attack. Li Dan piloted a submersible through the newly created lake, striking at alien positions from underwater. The vehicle had been designed years ago by engineers who knew that thermal weapons might someday melt the ice. The humans were always thinking ahead. The colony revealed another secret as massive defense platforms rose from the depths of the artificial lakes. These weapons had been waiting underwater for years, disguised as mining equipment. Now they showed their true nature as instruments of war. The alien forces found themselves fighting in a landscape that changed by the hour. What had been solid ice became liquid water, then solid ice again. As the humans controlled the freeze and thaw cycles, the invaders could not adapt to the constantly shifting battlefield. Park Dongmin triggered controlled avalanches that buried alien positions under tons of ice and rock. He had spent years studying the glacier dynamics and knew exactly where to place charges for maximum effect. The planet itself was fighting the invaders. The aliens tried to retreat to their ships, but found their landing zones had become death traps. The ice beneath their vessels had been weakened, and several ships crashed through the surface, disappearing forever into the dark water below. Commander Velther watched his invasion force being systematically destroyed by an enemy that seemed to control the very ground they stood on. His soldiers were dying not just from enemy fire but from the hostile environment itself. The human fighters moved like ghosts through the chaos, appearing to strike and then vanishing back into the landscape they had mastered. The aliens could not hit targets. They could not see, and their thermal imaging was useless in the steam, and Fog Dr. Song Mijin treated wounded aliens in the colony's medical center, learning about their biology while saving their lives. She discovered they came from a world where the temperature never dropped below 20 degrees Celsius. They literally could not survive without their environmental suits. The final alien assault began as Velther threw everything he had left into one desperate attack. He knew that if he failed, here his career and his life would be over. The Keltheran Empire did not tolerate failure, and commanders who lost wars did not live long. But the humans were ready for this final push. They had been preparing for 15 years, turning their world into a fortress that could not be taken. The aliens had superior numbers and better technology, but the humans had something more important. They had made this world their home, and they would defend it with everything they had. The 3,000 colonists fought as one people, united by their love for the frozen planet that had given them shelter and safety. They would not surrender. As the battle reached its climax, the true scope of human preparation became clear. The colony was not just a place to live, it was a weapon designed to defend itself against any threat. The aliens had not invaded a world, they had walked into a trap. The war for Arcturus 7 was reaching its end, and the aliens were learning a hard lesson about underestimating humanity. The humans had turned their greatest weakness into their greatest strength, making the killing cold into their ally. The fifth day dawned with the alien forces in full retreat. Commander Velther had lost more than half his army to an enemy he still did not fully understand. His remaining soldiers were demoralized, and their equipment was failing faster than it could be repaired. The orbital bombardment had stopped, not because the aliens chose to end it, but because the human defenses had shot down 3 of their support ships. The colonists had hidden anti-aircraft weapons in the ice they could reach into space itself. Colony leader Jang Heejin made the decision that would end the war. She authorized the activation of systems that had been kept secret even from most of the colonists. The true defensive capabilities of Arcturus 7 were about to be revealed. Massive platforms rose from hidden positions all across the battlefield. These were not just weapon emplacements, but mobile fortresses that had been disguised as natural ice formations for over a decade. The aliens found themselves facing firepower they had never imagined. The human counteroffensive began with surgical strikes that crippled the remaining alien ships. Grounded on the surface, Lim Dami led teams of engineers who had studied alien technology for days and knew exactly where to hit to cause maximum damage. The aliens tried to call for reinforcements but found their communications being jammed by systems they could not locate. The humans had built their electronic warfare capabilities into the planet itself, making it impossible for the invaders to call for help. Young fighter Quan Yaman piloted his Arctic combat suit through the alien lines, striking at command posts and supply depots. The suit was a marvel of human engineering, allowing a single person to fight like an entire squad while remaining nearly invisible. The alien retreat became a rout as their organized formations broke apart under constant attack from enemies they could not see or hit. The humans used the terrain like a weapon, making the ice and snow fight alongside them. Commander Velther realized that his invasion had failed completely. The humans were not just defending their colony, they were systematically destroying his entire force. The planet that was supposed to be an easy conquest had become a graveyard for his soldiers. The final alien stronghold was their main landing site, where the largest ships had crashed through weakened ice and become trapped. The humans surrounded the position and began the final assault. That would end the invasion once and for all. Moon Jungmin coordinated the attack from the central command bunker, watching as human forces closed in from all directions. The aliens were trapped with no escape route and no hope of rescue. Their environmental suits were failing and they had no shelter from the killing cold. The surrender came as the sun set on the 5th day of fighting. The remaining alien soldiers emerged from their positions with their hands raised in the universal gesture of defeat. They had learned the hard way that this frozen world belonged to humanity, but the humans faced a choice that would define their future: Some wanted to let the aliens freeze to death as payment for their invasion, others argued for mercy, pointing out that showing kindness to defeated enemies was what separated humans from conquerors. Elder Kim Hong-sik spoke for the colony council when he offered the aliens shelter in exchange for a promise never to return. The humans would save their enemies' lives, but only if those enemies swore to leave and never come back. The aliens accepted the offer, having no other choice. Their suits were failing, and they would be dead within hours. Without help, the humans had won not just through superior fighting, but through superior adaptation to their chosen world. Dr. Song Mi-jin worked around the clock treating alien survivors and learning about their biology. She discovered that they came from a tropical paradise where war was fought by machines rather than living beings. They had never experienced real hardship. The last alien commander, broken and humiliated, met with colony leaders in the great hall carved from living rock. He could not understand how anyone could choose to live in such conditions, much less thrive and build a civilization. There, through translation devices, he pleaded for safe passage for his surviving forces. What he could not comprehend was why the humans were even considering helping those who had come to destroy them. It made no sense by the logic of his own species. The humans explained their decision through young spokesperson Lim Dami, who had been born on this world and knew no other home. They had learned that survival meant adaptation, not domination. They would help the aliens leave, but with conditions. The aliens would return to their empire and report that Arcturus 7 was claimed by humanity. Any future invasion would be met with the full fury of a people who had learned to turn winter itself into their weapon. As the negotiations continued, the true scope of human achievement became clear. This was not just a military victory, but proof that humans could make any place their home. They had taken a world that should have killed them and made it into paradise. The war was ending, but the victory belonged to more than just the colonists. It belonged to all humanity, proving once again that no environment was too harsh and no challenge too great for those determined enough to call it home. The sixth day brought the end of the invasion as the last alien ships prepared to leave the frozen world that had become their nightmare. Commander Velther stood in the human medical bay, receiving treatment for frostbite and hypothermia that had nearly killed him. The alien commander could barely believe what he saw around him. The underground city was warm and comfortable, filled with art and music and the laughter of children playing. This was not a military base, but a home where families lived and worked and dreamed of the future. Dr. Song Mi-jin finished treating the last of the alien wounded, explaining to each one how their species' biology made them vulnerable to extreme cold. Aliens came from a world where the lowest temperature was warmer than a human summer day. The medical bay itself was a marvel of engineering, carved from solid rock and heated by geothermal vents. The air was clean and warm and filled with the scent of growing plants from the hydroponic gardens visible through transparent walls. Velther asked the question that had been haunting him since the battle began. How could anyone choose to live in such a place? The cold was a living enemy that attacked everything it touched, yet these humans seemed to love their frozen world. Young engineer Choi Min-yuk explained the answer as he showed the alien commander through the colony. The humans had not conquered the cold, they had learned to work with it. They used ice as building material and snow as insulation. The geothermal energy that heated their homes also powered their industries. The extreme cold preserved their food and provided natural refrigeration. The storms that would kill unprotected visitors were harnessed to generate electricity. Every aspect of the colony's design worked with the natural environment rather than against it. The humans had studied their world for years, learning its rhythms and adapting their technology to match the planet itself had become their ally. The alien evacuation began at noon, with human engineers helping to repair the damaged ships enough to reach orbit. The colonists could have let their enemies die in the cold, but they chose mercy over revenge. Colony elder Yoon Taijin watched the alien ships struggle to lift off through the ice storms. Many were too damaged to fly, and their crews would need rescue by other vessels. The humans had won a complete